Ifeoma screamed at the elderly woman with rage burning in her eyes, yanking her hand away violently, as if she had been touched by something disgusting. Who do you think you are to put your hands on me like that? Do I look like someone you can just reach out and grab whenever you feel like it? Are you out of your mind? The old lady stood there before her, hunched over with age and exhaustion clearly visible in every line of her body, dressed in a severely worn-out wrapper that had faded from years of washing and an oversized blouse that hung loosely on her thin frame. The blouse had clearly seen much better days in the past. Her voice came out soft and unsteady, trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation, as she tried her best to apologize for whatever offense she had apparently caused. I'm truly sorry, my dear child. I never meant to cause any offense or disrespect to you. Please forgive an old woman. If you could find it in your heart to spare even just 50 naira, I haven't had a single thing to eat since yesterday morning. My stomach is completely empty. But Ifeoma's expression only hardened further with visible contempt as she looked down at the woman with pure disgust written across her face. You people have absolutely no shame at all, do you? She snapped loudly, her voice carrying across the marketplace. Always out here begging and bothering hardworking citizens who are simply trying to go about their business in peace. Can't you see I'm busy? Don't you have any sense of dignity left? The atmosphere in the busy marketplace shifted dramatically, and suddenly as people began turning their attention away from their activities toward the unfolding scene. Vendors who had been loudly advertising their products stopped at their usual calls mid-sentence. Shoppers who had been hurrying through the market paused mid-stride to see what was causing the commotion. Young children stood frozen in place like statues, clutching oranges tightly in their small hands, their eyes wide with confusion. Something about what they were witnessing made everyone deeply uncomfortable and uneasy. There was a tension in the air that hadn't been there moments before. Yet Ifeoma showed absolutely no signs of stopping her verbal assault on the poor woman. In fact, she seemed to be gaining momentum, speaking even louder now. You're living in poverty because you're simply too lazy to work hard like other people, she announced at the top of her voice, making absolutely certain that everyone within earshot could hear her clearly. She wanted an audience for this. Do you honestly believe I've worked this incredibly hard, sacrificed so much, and struggled for years just so I can hand out my hard-earned money to lazy people like you? Do you think everyone existed on your pathetic level? I came from nothing and made something of myself. What's your excuse? Then, before a single person in the growing crowd could react or intervene to stop what was happening, she lifted her leg and delivered a forceful, deliberate kick to the elderly woman's side. The woman tumbled backward onto the dusty marketplace ground with a cry of pain and shock. Her headscarf came loose and slid halfway off her head, exposing her graying hair to everyone watching. Tears began forming immediately in her eyes, but they weren't solely from the physical pain she was experiencing in her body. The tears came primarily from the overwhelming, crushing humiliation of being treated this way in front of so many witnesses who had seen everything. Gasps rippled through the crowd of onlookers like a wave spreading across water. People couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. A young boy, no more than 15 years old, called out in protest with genuine shock in his voice, stating that the woman was old enough to be Ifeoma's own mother, or even grandmother. Is this really how you show respect to your elders? Is this what your parents taught you at home? Questioned another woman, standing nearby with clear disapproval and anger in her tone. Several other voices joined in, expressing their shock and disapproval. But Ifeoma remained completely unmoved by their reactions and criticisms. She didn't seem to care at all what these people thought of her. She stepped even closer to the fallen woman, bending down like royalty addressing a lowly servant who had displeased her, and declared with supreme arrogance and pride that her name was Ifeoma Odili, and that she worked at Sunshine Tech Solutions, one of the biggest technology companies in the entire country. Do you even have the slightest idea what that company is? Do you know what it takes to work there? She asked mockingly, not expecting an answer. Of course you don't know anything about it. Your children will never have careers at prestigious places like that. They don't have what it takes. They'll spend their entire lives wandering the streets aimlessly, just like you do now, begging from strangers. I earned more money in 7 days than you've probably seen in your entire miserable year. Some of us work hard and make something of ourselves. Now remove yourself from my path immediately before I do something worse." She made a loud sound of disgust deep in her throat and turned sharply on her heel, marching off into the crowd with her brand new white sneakers, kicking up clouds of sand and dust as she strutted confidently toward the pepper vendor's stand, as if absolutely nothing significant or wrong had just occurred. As far as she was concerned, she had just put an annoying beggar in her place. A compassionate young man with kind eyes quickly rushed over to help the elderly woman to her feet, with gentle, careful hands, treating her with the dignity she deserved. "Mother, are you all right? Are you hurt badly?" he asked with genuine concern evident in his soft voice. He carefully brushed the sand and dirt from her back and clothing and placed his supportive arm around her trembling shoulders to steady her. "Come and rest over here for a moment." "Take your time," he whispered kindly, guiding her slowly. Several other concerned people gathered around as well, their faces showing sympathy and anger at what they had witnessed. They offered sachets of pure water and asked repeatedly if she needed any additional assistance or if they should take her to see a doctor or nurse. But the woman simply shook her head slowly from side to side, too shaken to speak much, and whispered her sincere gratitude, thanking the kind child and the others for their help and concern as she was carefully guided to a quieter corner away from the crowd and the curious stares. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to the anger she had caused, Ifeoma was already busy selecting the best pieces of chicken and the ripest tomatoes like a queen carefully preparing for an elaborate feast for important guests, smiling proudly to herself with complete satisfaction at how she had handled that situation. She felt powerful. She had absolutely no awareness or idea that just a short distance behind her current position, someone with a smartphone had captured the entire incident on video. Every single word she had spoken, every cruel insult she had delivered, every aggressive movement she had made had been recorded in clear detail. She didn't realize or suspect that within the next 24 hours, her entire comfortable life would become completely unrecognizable and would never be the same again. And she most definitely didn't know the shocking, devastating truth that would soon shake her to her very core and destroy everything she had built. The poor elderly woman she had kicked so callously and without mercy was Mama Chinwe, the beloved mother of Chukwuebuka Okafor, the billionaire founder and chief executive officer of Sunshine Tech Solutions, the exact same prestigious company where Ifeoma worked with such pride and boasted about constantly to anyone who would listen. But by the following Monday morning when she arrived at work, all that pride and arrogance would come crashing down around her in the most devastating fashion imaginable. Before that terrible kick disrupted the peaceful marketplace, before the recorded video spread across the entire world through social media, before her name filled countless blogs and messaging groups with people discussing what she had done, Ifeoma Odili was simply an ordinary young woman from Asaba, a peaceful town nestled in the center of Delta State in southern Nigeria. She had grown up in a very modest two-bedroom house with a rusty zinc roof that leaked when it rained hard, alongside her loving mother and two younger brothers who looked up to her. Her father had tragically died in a terrible motorcycle accident when she was barely 13 years old, still just a child. From that devastating day forward, from the moment they buried him, Ifeoma made herself an unwavering promise that she repeated to herself constantly. I absolutely must never experience this kind of crushing poverty ever again in my lifetime. I will do whatever it takes to escape this life. She deeply hated how people in the community looked at her mother with pitying expressions that said they felt sorry for her. She hated wearing secondhand skirts that had belonged to other students when she went to school, knowing everyone could tell they weren't new. She hated being sent home repeatedly and publicly because her family couldn't afford to pay the school fees on time. The shame of walking out while other students watched. During the long nights while her mother cried quietly in their dark bedroom, thinking her children couldn't hear, Ifeoma would whisper determined words to herself like a prayer or a mantra. Someday I'll become wealthy and successful beyond my wildest dreams. Someday people will show me the respect I deserve, and they'll wish they had treated me better. Someday I'll show everyone who looked down on us. After completing secondary school with good grades, despite all the challenges, She couldn't immediately afford to attend university like many of her classmates did. The fees were simply too high for her family. So she remained at home for an entire difficult year, feeling left behind, teaching neighborhood children basic subjects for 300 naira per individual lesson, using whatever small money she managed to earn to help feed her struggling family and keep them going. But despite the disappointment, she never stopped reading and learning every single day. She was determined to improve herself. She would walk to the town's internet cafe every afternoon, paying 70 naira for an hour of access to the computers, and teach herself how to write code in various programming languages like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and Python. She absorbed these technical skills like someone consuming desperately needed food after a long fast. While her peers and former classmates were spending hours watching entertainment videos and comedy skits online, wasting their time, she was watching educational technology tutorials with complete focus and dedication, taking careful notes in a worn notebook. After some time passed, several months of constant practice and learning, she began creating small basic websites for local businesses and churches in the area who needed an online presence but couldn't afford professional developers. People throughout the community started noticing her exceptional natural talent and her dedication to her work. Word spread slowly. By the time she finally gained admission into the University of Port Harcourt to study computer science, which felt like a dream come true, she already had several paying clients for her services and a small reputation. Her roommates in the university hostel mocked her behavior at first with cruel jokes and laughter, not understanding her drive. "Look at this one here," one of them laughed mockingly, always pressing away at her laptop like she's working in some fancy Silicon Valley company in America. Does she think she's special? But Ifeoma never bothered to respond to their taunts or try to explain herself. She simply kept her head down and kept building her skills in her portfolio, working late into the night while they partied and enjoyed themselves. By her final year at university, after 4 years of dedicated work, she had won 3 major technology competitions with significant cash prizes and was hired remotely by a promising startup company in Lagos that had heard about her remarkable abilities. She relocated there immediately after completing her mandatory youth service year, rented a small, self-contained apartment in a decent neighborhood, and finally started living the life she had dreamed about and worked toward for so many difficult years. The struggle was finally paying off and she could see the results. Now she was earning good income in dollars through international contracts and freelance projects for foreign clients. She wore expensive, stylish clothes from popular brands that she had once only dreamed about. She posted photographs on social media with impressive captions carefully designed to make people envious of her success. She entered ride-sharing vehicles like Royalty, expecting royal treatment from the drivers, and getting annoyed when they didn't recognize her importance or give her special treatment. People from her home village who had ignored her family completely during the hard times started sending her messages through various social media platforms, asking for financial help and favors. "Please assist us with small contributions for school fees. We've heard you're doing very well for yourself now in Lagos. May God continue to bless you abundantly and increase your prosperity even more." She gradually began feeling completely untouchable and above everyone else, like she had transcended her origins completely. Even her behavior in church services began to change noticeably over time. She would arrive late deliberately, making an entrance so people would notice her. She started calling herself the tech queen in all her online profiles and social media bios proudly. Her follower count grew substantially week by week as more people discovered her. Every minor achievement in her life and career became a social media post for everyone to see and admire, with carefully chosen photos and captions. "Dear poverty, you have lost this battle completely and permanently. Nobody can ever shame a child of divine grace and favor. I am blessed and highly favored beyond measure." But slowly and steadily, without her even fully realizing what was happening to her character, pride crept into her heart like a silent, invisible thief, stealing away her humility and her memory of where she came from and who had helped her. She stopped answering her mother's phone calls regularly, finding them annoying and full of requests for money. She began blocking anyone who dared to ask her for any kind of help or favor, no matter how small or reasonable. "I suffered through everything completely alone with no help from anyone when I was struggling," she would tell people dismissively when they complained about her changed behavior. Let everybody carry their own burdens and deal with their own problems. I'm not a charity organization. Even in the office environment at Sunshine Tech Solutions, where she worked in the software development department, her colleagues noticed her increasingly poor attitude toward others, especially those she considered beneath her status. She never bothered greeting the security personnel at the gate when she arrived each morning. She once told the office cleaning lady very harshly to stop breathing anywhere near her desk because the sound of her breathing bothered her concentration. But nobody in management said anything to correct her behavior or call her out for it. Why would they bother? Because Afoma was genuinely intelligent and talented at her technical work. She consistently delivered excellent results for the company, meeting tight deadlines and solving complex coding problems that others struggle with. And in technology companies throughout the industry, results and productivity speak far louder than respectful behavior toward others or good character. Technical skills matter more than personality. So she continued this pattern of disrespectful behavior unchecked until that fateful Friday afternoon at Central Market when everything changed. The same young woman who used to walk barefoot on hot sand to fetch water for her family from the community, now wore pristine white expensive sneakers that cost more than her mother's monthly income just to insult someone's elderly mother in public without any remorse. The same Ifeoma who once prayed desperately and tearfully for just 50 naira to buy food for her hungry family, now kicked an old woman asking humbly for 50 naira to eat something. But fate, like a quiet drum echoing in the distant forest that you don't hear until it's too late to escape, was already sounding its warning because unknown to her at that very moment, the woman she had kicked so callously and without any mercy was not just any random beggar, wandering the marketplace hoping for coins from strangers. She was Mama Chinwe, the beloved and deeply respected mother of Chukwuebuka Okafor, the brilliant self-made billionaire who owned the entire technology company where Ifeoma was employed and drew her substantial salary from. The same incredibly successful man whose large professional photograph hung prominently in the reception area of Sunshine Tech headquarters for everyone to see when they entered the building. The same man who had once told his human resources team very clearly and firmly during an important meeting that talent and skills are certainly valuable and necessary for any company, but character is absolutely everything that matters most in the end when building a sustainable company and a strong team that works well together. That evening, while Ifeoma relaxed comfortably in her living room on her expensive imported furniture, sipping a cold drink and laughing at comedy sketches and entertainment videos on Instagram, completely at ease and thinking about what to cook for dinner, her phone suddenly buzzed loudly with an incoming notification. She picked it up casually from the side table, expecting a message from a friend or a like on her recent post. It was a video file sent by someone she didn't recognize at all. Curious about what it could be, she clicked on it to watch. The video showed the marketplace scene from earlier that day, the violent kick she had delivered to the old woman, the cruel insults she had shouted for everyone to hear, her arrogant words about her job and her income, and how much better she was than everyone else. Everything was there, captured in clear detail. She dropped her cup in shock, spilling liquid on her clothes and the floor. The video had already gone completely viral across multiple social media platforms with thousands of views and shares in just a few hours. Her name was already trending nationwide with thousands of angry comments from people she didn't know. Tech Queen of Shame, one popular headline screamed. Sunshine Tech Disgrace, read another angry post. She kicked somebody's mother in public like an animal. Disgusting behavior. Her Instagram account was flooded with angry messages from complete strangers cursing her. Her messaging application was completely full of screenshots, showing how widely the video had spread across the internet like wildfire. Multiple social media platforms were on fire with heated discussions about her actions and her terrible character. Still, despite seeing all this negativity, she attempted to act calm and collected, telling herself it would blow over quickly. They'll forget about this by tomorrow morning, she muttered to herself unconvincingly, trying desperately to believe her own words. These things never last long on social media. People have short memories, and something else will distract them. But the very next morning, early on Saturday when she was still in bed, her phone rang with a call that would change absolutely everything in her comfortable life. The ringing phone seemed louder than usual that Saturday morning, cutting through the silence of her apartment like an alarm. Ifeoma sat up quickly on the edge of her bed, her heart already beating faster with anxiety, staring at the screen with growing dread and a sick feeling developing in her stomach. Human Resources Department, Sunshine Tech Solutions. Her heart began racing uncontrollably, pounding hard in her chest like it would burst out. She tried desperately to act brave and composed, cleared her throat carefully several times, and answered the call with a shaking hand, her voice unsteady. "Hello. Good morning to you." The voice on the other end wasn't friendly or warm at all. There was no greeting, no pleasantries, no small talk. "Good morning, Miss Ifeoma Odili. Please report to the office headquarters by exactly 10 o'clock sharp this morning. Do not be late under any circumstances. There will be an emergency disciplinary meeting that you are required to attend." The call ended abruptly with a sharp click. No explanation given, no inquiries about her well-being or how she was doing. Just that single, direct, cold instruction that left no room for questions or discussion. She dropped the phone onto her bed and stared up at the white ceiling above her, feeling her entire world starting to collapse around her. A deep, overwhelming fear rose in her chest, the kind that crawls slowly through your entire body and settles heavily into your throat, making it hard to breathe properly or swallow anything. She stood up slowly on shaking legs and walked to the large mirror hanging on her bedroom wall. Her eyes were puffy and swollen from lack of proper sleep. She hadn't managed to sleep much at all during the night despite trying. Throughout the entire long night, tossing and turning restlessly, her video had continued spreading like wildfire across the internet, being shared again and again by thousands of people. On various social media platforms, someone had written angrily that this is the fundamental problem with these newly wealthy young people who get a little money and completely forget where they came from originally, with absolutely no home training or proper upbringing from their parents. Someone on another popular platform wrote that this is precisely why you should always treat every person with kindness and respect, regardless of their situation in life. You never know who might be watching your behavior or who that person might be connected to. Popular influencers with millions of followers picked up the story and shared it widely. Religious leaders and pastors used it as sermon illustrations about pride coming before a fall. Her name became a nationwide example of public shame and disgrace, a cautionary tale that parents would tell their children. Still trying desperately to convince herself, she told herself repeatedly that it's just social media noise and temporary drama that will fade away soon. Once I explain myself properly and give my side of the story, once they hear what really happened and why I reacted that way, they'll understand my perspective and realize it wasn't completely my fault. She dressed quickly and carefully, choosing a plain gray blouse and simple black trousers from her extensive wardrobe. No makeup application, no expensive perfume, no flashy jewelry. For the first time in many months, she didn't feel like a queen at all. She felt like a criminal being brought before judgment to face serious consequences. When she arrived at the impressive office building in her ride, the receptionist behind the desk didn't smile at her like she usually did. The friendly security guard at the entrance didn't offer his usual cheerful morning greeting that he gave everyone. It was as if everyone already knew exactly what was about to happen and wanted nothing to do with her anymore. At the boardroom entrance on the top floor, she opened the heavy wooden door hesitantly with a trembling hand and stepped inside the cold, air-conditioned room. The human resources manager was seated at the long, polished table and waiting with a very serious expression on her face. So was her direct team leader, deliberately avoiding eye contact with her. And at the far end of the long, polished table sat someone she had only previously seen in framed photographs hanging on office walls throughout the building and on the company website. Chukwuebuka Okafor, 44 years old, tall and confident in his bearing, deep dark skin, round face with a full neat beard, and sharp, intelligent eyes behind stylish reading glasses. Wearing a simple white traditional outfit with a golden expensive wristwatch on his left wrist. The chief executive officer himself in person. She had never met him face to face before this moment. Ifeoma froze completely in place near the door, unable to move forward, her legs feeling weak. She didn't even know he was currently in the country. He traveled frequently for business. Please sit down now, he said calmly, his voice carrying enormous weight and authority, despite its quiet, controlled tone. She obeyed immediately without a word, walking forward on shaking legs that felt like they might give out. Her hands trembled visibly as she clutched her handbag tightly in her lap, her knuckles turning white from the pressure. The human resources woman spoke first with professional formality, consulting papers and documents in front of her on the table. Miss Ifeoma Odili, we have thoroughly reviewed the viral video that has been circulating widely on social media platforms since yesterday. You were clearly identified and recognized by multiple people, insulting, physically assaulting, and publicly humiliating an elderly woman in the market. Multiple witnesses have confirmed it was definitely you in the video. The evidence is clear. Please tell us exactly what happened from your perspective. Explain yourself and your actions. Ifeoma swallowed hard, her mouth feeling dry. Her throat felt completely dry like sandpaper rubbing. I honestly didn't know someone was recording the interaction, she began weakly. She touched me first and invaded my personal space without my permission. I was just defending my boundaries and my personal space. You're not being judged here because someone happened to record you with their phone, her team leader interrupted firmly, finally looking directly at her with disappointment. We're here specifically because of how you chose to treat another human being. That's what this meeting is about. Your character and your values. She turned to face Mr. Chukwuebuka directly, hoping desperately that he would understand her side and be reasonable. He hadn't spoken a single word yet since telling her to sit down. He was simply watching her silently with an unblinking, steady gaze that made her extremely uncomfortable and nervous. His eyes didn't blink much at all. He looked tired and deeply disappointed in her, but not particularly surprised by the situation, as if he had seen this kind of behavior before from other employees. Then he finally spoke with devastating simplicity and calm authority. Do you know who that woman is that you kicked yesterday? Ifeoma shook her head negatively, genuinely confused by the question and where this was going. No, sir, I don't know her at all. I'd never seen her before yesterday. She's my mother, he stated flatly and clearly, letting the shocking words hang in the heavy air between them. Complete silence descended upon the room like a heavy blanket, suffocating everything. It felt like all the air had suddenly disappeared from the space, sucked out entirely. Ifeoma blinked repeatedly, confused and completely disbelieving what she had just heard. Surely this was some kind of mistake. Sir, she stammered weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. Surely he was joking or mistaken. I said very clearly, he repeated very slowly and deliberately, so there would be absolutely no misunderstanding of his words. The woman you kicked violently in the marketplace yesterday afternoon is my mother. My own biological mother. Her mouth opened in shock, but absolutely no words came out. Her brain couldn't process this devastating information properly. She goes out occasionally into the community dressed as a poor woman to observe firsthand how people are treated in society, to see with her own eyes how the less fortunate are treated by others who have more. It's something she's done faithfully for many years now, long before we had any money or success. It reminds her and our entire family of where we came from originally, of our humble beginnings and the struggles we faced. We must never forget our roots. He stood up slowly from his chair and walked deliberately around the table, his expensive shoes making soft sounds on the polished floor. I came from absolutely nothing as well in my early life. He continued speaking, his voice remaining steady and controlled. My family had nothing. We struggled every single day, but I didn't allow money and success to turn me into a monster completely lacking basic humanity and compassion for others. Money doesn't change who you are fundamentally. It reveals who you truly are deep inside. Ifeoma began crying uncontrollably, hot tears streaming down her face freely. Sir, I genuinely didn't know who she was at all. Please forgive me. I swear I didn't know it was your mother specifically. If I had known who she was, I never would have acted that way. You shouldn't need to know someone's background or connections or family relations to treat them with basic dignity and respect, he snapped forcefully, his voice rising sharply for the first time, showing real anger. His voice echoed powerfully through the quiet room. Even if she was simply a beggar with no connections whatsoever to anyone important, even if she was nobody at all, Is this how you treat people? Is this who you've become as a person? Ifeoma's tears were now pouring freely down her face, dripping onto her clothes and hands. She suddenly knelt down on the hard office floor, not caring how it looked to everyone watching. I'm so sorry, sir. I'm truly, deeply sorry from the bottom of my heart. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I was just stressed and completely overwhelmed with life and work. I completely lost control of myself and my emotions. I made a terrible, terrible mistake. Please give me another chance. Chukwuebuka looked down at her kneeling, crying form for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he turned slowly to the human resources manager and said the words she had been dreading hearing. Terminate her employment contract immediately and effectively. Process it today. Sir, please don't do this to me, she cried desperately, still on her knees with her hands clasped. Please give me just one more chance. I'll change completely. I promise I'll change and never behave like that again. You represent this company everywhere you go in public, whether you're wearing our badge or not, he said firmly, ignoring her desperate pleas completely. Your technical skills are impressive and valuable. Absolutely. We recognize your talent and your contributions, but your character is dangerous and destructive to our company culture. We build things here at this company, not just computer code and software applications. We build people and their futures. We build a positive culture of respect, and you don't fit into that culture anymore. You've shown us who you really are. He walked out of the boardroom without looking back even once, the door closing firmly behind him with a final sound. Just like that, in a matter of minutes, the prestigious job she had fought so hard for, sacrificed for, worked countless late nights for, was completely gone forever. Everything she had built professionally was destroyed in an instant. The receptionist was already preparing her official exit documentation and paperwork when she emerged from the boardroom 30 minutes later, eyes red and swollen from crying. The office cleaner, the same woman she had once insulted so cruelly and told harshly to stop breathing near her desk, watched silently from a distance as she walked out slowly carrying her red swollen eyes in a single plastic bag containing her few personal belongings from her desk drawer. There wasn't much to take. Her ride-sharing journey back home to her apartment was completely silent and suffocating with tension. The driver sensed immediately that something was seriously wrong and didn't attempt any conversation. And when she finally opened her front door with shaking hands and entered her apartment, the silence inside the room felt deafeningly loud and oppressive, crushing down on her. The curtains didn't move at all. There was no breeze coming through. The refrigerator hummed its usual mechanical sound in the kitchen. She sat down directly on the cold tiled floor, not even making it to the comfortable couch, and stared at her phone screen through the blurry, tear-filled eyes. Hundreds of messages filled her overflowing inbox, some mocking her publicly and celebrating her downfall with joy, some defending her actions and saying the video was taken out of context and edited, others simply watching the dramatic situation unfold like it was entertainment for them. But one message stood out clearly from all the rest, cutting through all the noise. It was from her mother back home in the village, sent an hour ago. I saw the video of what happened at the market. Come home immediately. We need to talk seriously. The modest house in Ogwashi village had not changed at all over the many years she had been gone living in the city. The red zinc roof still had that same permanent bend at the corner section where it had been damaged badly in a storm years ago and never properly fixed. The narrow dirt footpath from the rusty gate to the front door was still lined with broken cement blocks that had never been repaired properly due to lack of money. But something fundamental inside of Ifeoma had changed dramatically in just a few short days. As the crowded bus dropped her at the familiar dusty junction and drove away quickly in a cloud of exhaust and dust, she stood still for a long moment, fine dust clinging to her black skirt, her tired eyes scanning the village road. She hadn't walked on in several years. Everything looked so much smaller than she remembered from her childhood. Gone were the high heels she used to wear proudly everywhere. Gone were the long artificial nails she maintained expensively, the expensive human hair wigs she changed regularly, and the pride that used to make her walk with her back stretched tall and her head held high above everyone. She now wore simple, plain clothing, flat slippers that were comfortable for walking, a faded blouse she had borrowed from a friend, and the natural hair she once always hid carefully under expensive wigs because she thought it wasn't good enough for professional looking. Her mother, Mama Grace, in her early 60s, with a soft, round face lined with years of hard work, warm brown skin with a gray scarf tied carefully over her neat cornrows, wearing a simple faded wrapper and clean white blouse, was already waiting patiently at the wooden door when she finally arrived home from her journey. She must have been watching and waiting for hours. She didn't say a single word initially, didn't ask any questions about what happened, just opened her arms wide in welcome, like she always had. Ifeoma burst into tears immediately and collapsed completely into her mother's warm, familiar embrace that smelled like home, feeling like a small child again seeking comfort. That evening, she couldn't manage to eat anything, despite not having eaten anything all day during her travel. Her stomach was in tight knots of anxiety. Her mother placed a plate of white rice and pepper soup directly in front of her at the small wooden table, but her hands just shook uncontrollably whenever she tried to lift the spoon to her mouth to eat. Mama Grace sat down beside her daughter quietly, watching her with deep concern and love. "You see, Ifeoma, we raised you with respect and proper values from when you were small. We taught you clearly right from wrong and how to treat people. But sometimes the world teaches harsh lessons that home could never teach you, no matter how hard we try. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way through pain. I've brought such terrible disgrace upon you, Mom," she whispered with deep shame, still unable to look directly at her mother's face. "The whole village must be talking about me and laughing. I've disgraced myself and our entire family name in public. Everyone will laugh at us and mock us." "No," Mama Grace said gently but very firmly, taking her daughter's trembling hand in hers. "You simply got lost along your journey in life. It happens to many people who achieve success. But thank God Almighty you're still breathing and alive today. That means you still have the precious opportunity to find your way back to who you really are deep inside, to your true self." That night, as the crickets sang their usual loud songs outside in the darkness, and the old ceiling fan creaked rhythmically above her childhood bed with its familiar sound, Ifeoma couldn't manage to fall asleep no matter how hard she tried. Her mind kept dragging her backward relentlessly through painful memories she had tried so hard to forget and bury. She remembered so vividly when her father died suddenly and unexpectedly during her third year at university. They had absolutely nothing left after paying the funeral expenses. Mama had to sell bread by the roadside every single day, rain or shine, just to send her back to school to continue her education and not drop out. She remembered clearly when her only shoes had large holes worn through the soles, and she had to patch her only pair of jeans with needle and thread repeatedly because she couldn't afford to buy new clothes. She remembered when she received the amazing scholarship to study coding through online courses. How incredibly excited she had been about the opportunity. How she used borrowed phones from kind neighbors to attend virtual classes because their family didn't own a phone. How she used to kneel down faithfully in church every Sunday morning, begging God desperately to change her life circumstances and give her a breakthrough from poverty. And God had truly answered her sincere prayers. She secured a good job with a good salary. She bought a car for herself. She moved to Lagos to start a new life. And then slowly she forgot where she came from. She forgot the struggle and the pain. She forgot the people who had helped her along the way. 3 days later, on a quiet, hot afternoon, when the sun was high in the bright sky, Mama Grace was in the backyard pounding yam in the large wooden mortar when an unexpected visitor walked slowly through their compound gate. It was Mama Chinwe, in her late 60s, with smooth, dark skin despite her age, short and strong despite her years, with tired but kind eyes, dressed in a simple brown wrapper, worn rubber slippers, and a scarf tied neatly over her white hair. Ifeoma froze completely the moment she looked up from what she was doing and saw who was standing there in their compound. She didn't know whether to kneel immediately or run away and hide somewhere. Instead, she simply fell flat on her knees right there in the dirt yard, trembling violently with fear and overwhelming shame. "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely, her voice cracking with raw emotion and pain. Ma, please forgive me. I'm so deeply sorry for everything I did to you. Please have mercy on me. Mama Chinwe walked slowly forward toward her, taking her time with each step, her weathered hands clasped behind her back. Stand up now, child, she said calmly, in a voice that was neither angry nor harsh. Ifeoma obeyed immediately, keeping her eyes still lowered respectfully to the ground, unable to meet the woman's gaze directly out of shame. You know, the older woman said gently, almost thoughtfully, when I first saw you in the marketplace that day, I thought you were just another proud young woman from Lagos with money and success. But when I looked carefully into your eyes, really looked deeply, I knew there was deep pain hiding behind all that pride and anger you were displaying. You were hurting inside. Ifeoma wiped her tears with the back of her hand, sniffling. I didn't know who you were at all, Ma. I was so angry at the entire world, at my life, at everything that had happened to me. But I took it all out on you unfairly. You didn't deserve that treatment. No one deserves that kind of treatment. You were angry at your own wounds and unhealed trauma from your difficult past, Mama Chinwe said wisely, with understanding. That's what many people do, unfortunately, when they're hurting inside and haven't dealt with their pain. They bleed on others who didn't cut them in the first place. They hurt innocent others because they themselves are in pain and don't know how to handle it properly. Mama Grace, who had been watching quietly from a distance near the house, invited her respectfully inside their modest home. They all sat together in the small living room on the old brown plastic chairs that had been there for many years. Mama Chinwe accepted gratefully a cold bottle of malt drink that was offered and drank slowly while collecting her thoughts carefully, looking around the simple room with its worn furniture. Then she reached into her handbag with her weathered, work-worn hands and brought something out carefully and deliberately. An envelope. She placed it deliberately on the small table between them. That's not for punishment or judgment of you, she said meaningfully, looking directly at Ifeoma with kind eyes. It's for purpose and redemption, a second chance at life. Inside the envelope was a formal letter on official paper, an invitation not to another technology job, as Ifeoma might have desperately hoped, but to speak to young women and girls at a major leadership conference to share her complete story honestly. How she rose up from nothing and how she fell down hard from pride. You must use your voice to teach others what pride and arrogance can destroy in a person's life, Mama Chinwe explained patiently and clearly. Because the same voice that insults and tears down people can also heal and build them up if it learns the right words to speak, if it learns true humility and compassion. The conference was held in the city of Enugu several weeks later. Ifeoma stood nervously on the large stage in front of over 700 teenagers, mostly young girls from different schools across the region. She wore a simple green dress and no makeup whatsoever. She posed and vulnerable standing there. She told them absolutely everything without hiding any details or trying to make herself look good in any way. How she insulted an elderly woman in public. How she lost her prestigious job because of her behavior. How she forgot who she was fundamentally as a person. She didn't paint herself as a hero or a victim in any way. She told the complete, honest truth about her pride and her devastating fall. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt genuinely light and free inside her heart. The heavy burden was finally lifting. After the speech concluded and she stepped off the stage on shaking legs, many girls came rushing forward to embrace her tightly, some with tears streaming down their young faces. Some cried openly and unashamedly. One girl whispered to her with a shaking, emotional voice that she had almost struck her own mother the previous week during a heated argument. But your story has completely changed my heart and my mind. Thank you so much for your honesty and courage. Back in Ogwashi village on a quiet Sunday evening several weeks later, Ifeoma sat peacefully under the old mango tree in their family compound, writing thoughtfully in her personal journal. Sometimes God allows you to fall hard so that you can hear what the ground is trying to tell you. The lesson isn't found in the disgrace itself, but in the decision to rise again afterward with wisdom and humility. She closed the journal carefully, and for the first time in a very long time, she smiled genuinely from deep inside her soul. It had been 4 full months since the powerful conference in Enugu. Ifeoma was no longer trending online or being discussed, but her name still left a bitter taste in some people's mouths when they heard it. She had tried applying to various technology companies for employment. None responded to her applications or gave her interviews. She called some of her old friends from her Lagos days. Most ignored her calls completely or made excuses. Even some churches didn't want her speaking to their youth groups about her experience. "We don't want controversy or negative publicity for our church," one pastor said gently but firmly, apologizing. It hurt deeply every single time, but she didn't fight against it or become bitter. Instead, she started teaching children in her village how to use computers properly and basic coding. The village secondary school had just one old laptop, slow and unreliable and constantly freezing, but she used it faithfully every afternoon under the mango tree behind the school building. Her first students were 4 young girls and 1 enthusiastic boy. By the second week, 12 more eager children had joined. She wasn't paid anything at all. She didn't care about money anymore like she used to. She was healing internally and finding peace. One Monday morning, just after her usual morning devotion time with Mama Grace, where they prayed together, someone knocked loudly on their wooden gate. Ifeoma opened it cautiously, and her heart jumped violently in her chest with shock. Standing there tall and sharp in his white traditional outfit was Chukwuebuka Okafor himself. Mid-40s, clean-shaved, caramel skin, strong jawline, dark designer glasses, holding a leather bag in one hand with black polished shoes stained lightly with village dust. Yes, the same Chukwuebuka Okafor, the technology billionaire chief executive officer of Sunshine Tech Solutions, who had fired her. He removed his glasses slowly with one hand. His eyes were calm and steady as they watched her carefully. "Good morning, Miss Ifeoma. How are you doing?" Ifeoma's throat tightened painfully with emotion. "Sir, I hope I'm not disturbing your day by any chance." She stepped aside quickly and nervously. "No, sir. Please come inside our home. You're very welcome here." Mama Grace, hearing the visitor's unfamiliar voice from the kitchen where she was cooking, stepped out quickly with flour covering her hands and apron. Her eyes widened dramatically when she recognized him from newspapers and television. "Ah, this face is far too familiar." "I know you," Ifeoma whispered urgently to her mother. "Mama, he's the chief executive officer, the one I disgraced myself working under, the one whose mother I kicked." Mama gasped audibly and covered her mouth. "Jesus is Lord Almighty. What brings you here?" But Chukwuebuka smiled warmly and genuinely and bowed his head slightly in respect. "I'm only a man, Ma. Nothing special. Thank you very much for welcoming me into your humble home with such kindness." They all sat together in the small parlor on the old furniture. After a few minutes of light conversation and drinking tea that Mama Grace prepared, Chukwuebuka turned directly to Ifeoma with a serious expression. "You've changed significantly as a person," he said simply and directly. Ifeoma nodded slowly, looking down. "Life forced me to change. I had no choice but to change or stay broken. I saw the video recording of your powerful speech at the conference, and I've read the many stories about what you're doing here in this village, teaching children." She blinked, genuinely surprised that he knew about these things. He continued speaking. "What impressed me wasn't just your honesty about what happened and taking responsibility. It was your courage to stand up after such a devastating fall. Not everyone gets up after falling so hard and publicly. Most people stay down." Ifeoma lowered her head humbly. "There's a new project we're working on currently at the company," he said. "A major program to train 12,000 rural girls in technology across Nigeria. We're calling it Rise Again Africa. We need someone who understands both the pain and the process of transformation. Someone who has been through something real." He brought out a contract from his leather bag and slid it across the table toward her. "We want you to lead the entire initiative as director." For a moment, the entire world stood completely still and silent. Ifeoma stared at the official paper in complete disbelief. Her fingers trembled as she touched it gently like it might disappear. This wasn't just a job opportunity. It was redemption and restoration of everything she had lost. "I don't deserve this chance at all," she whispered, tears forming. Chukwuebuka looked at her intently and said firmly, "That's where you're completely wrong. You deserve it now more than ever before, because now you'll never forget where you came from originally, and what pride can do. Mama Grace let out a soft emotional amen and wiped her eyes with the edge of her wrapper, overwhelmed with gratitude. By the following month, Ifeoma was in the capital city of Abuja for the program launch. But this time, she wasn't going in as the prideful young woman who had insulted a stranger in the market. She was going in as a woman who had been broken completely, who had learned painful but valuable lessons, who had grown tremendously as a person. She didn't hide her past mistakes from anyone. In every village they visited across the country, she told the complete story without shame, not to gain pity from people, but to give serious warning about the dangers of pride and forgetting your roots. The Rise Again Africa project went viral across social media in a positive way. Videos of young girls learning coding under trees and were shared widely. Ifeoma's name returned to social media, this time in genuine praise rather than shame and mockery. One major headline read, "From Shame to Purpose, the Remarkable Fall and Rise of Ifeoma Grace." She smiled at the encouraging article, closed the browser tab, and got back to her important work helping others. On her birthday months later, she received a handwritten letter in the mail. It was from Mama Chinwe. "My dear daughter, many people fall hard in life, but not many get up with clear purpose in their hands. You didn't just change your own story, you changed mine as well. You reminded me why we do what we do. Keep walking with humility always. Keep building with grace and compassion. We are very proud of you and what you've become. Love always, Mama Chinwe." She read the touching letter 4 times slowly, hugged it tightly to her chest, and wept openly. Not from pain this time, but from pure joy and gratitude. Sometimes the very person you push down may be the one to lift you back up. And sometimes the worst day of your life can become the seed of your life's purpose. Ifeoma learned that lesson not in a classroom, but in real life through pain. And now she was using that precious lesson to light the way for thousands of others who were struggling and needed hope.